And now, and I'll go ahead and take notes.
Well, sorry, folks, it's been a while since I've actually been able to come to one of these community meetings, so you're just going to have to tolerate me stumbling through any agenda or questions. But given that I'm on the steering committee and on the TOC, this might be a good opportunity if people have questions about, what those different groups do, what issues, we're dealing with. The TOC, we try to deal with kind of the higher level roadmap, helping prioritize, what goes into specific releases, kind of providing a framework for the other working groups to be effective. And then the steering committee, which Chase also participates on, right? We deal with some of the other kind of, for want of a better term, the business side of running the project, marketing, community event management, there are other kinds of pressing issues that don't really have a technical solution. They kind of get handed over to the steering committee. So with that introduction, what would people like to talk about?
There are a couple of items in the agenda. I'm
still trying to get that open.
Okay. I didn't know if you want to hit it off with Q&A or hit the agenda items and then do Q&A after.
All right, let me. All right, the Google Hangouts in this room is interrogating me. Sorry. All right. Niraj, are you here? Let's see, Niraj. He was the one who had two things on the agenda. Maybe.
Hey, Louis, your audio just got fuzzy. I think your hand might be on the microphone, my guess.
No.
That's better.
Okay, I probably did. I still don't see Niraj. So we could just do Q&A, and then if Niraj dials in, we could pick up the agenda again. Let's see. If people don't know the agenda, someone just pinged it to the chat window. Niraj was going to talk about external service telemetry capabilities that were added in 1.3.1, and then the Montreal Dev Fest, which I'm not super familiar with, but maybe someone on the call can also talk about.
Hey, Louis, I'm joining this call from Zach Zori's computer today. So I'm here whenever you want. Sorry, I was in another meeting, didn't get time to join from my laptop.
No, that's fine. Yeah, why don't you go ahead then? We'll start with the agenda and then we'll just do Q&A at the end.
All right, that sounds good. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to talk about is we added some capabilities for external service telemetry in 1.3 and 1.3.1. So if someone can click on that link, it takes you to the blog that is on Istio's istio.io website. And that blog explains how you can use these capabilities to understand whatever external services you are accessing. So previously, there were gaps in our telemetry where if external service was blocked, we used to not get any telemetry. Similarly, if you had allow any, that means all the external service traffic used to be allowed. You had no visibility into what services you are actually communicating. So the reason I brought this up is using this is not as easy as I would like. So if someone wants to provide feedback to me or the policies and telemetry work group, I would really like to improve this, and we want to explore ideas on how to make it even better, because having visibility into your external service is one of the key benefits you can get out of Istio, and it's really important to understand it from a security point of view. So that's it. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
So is this?
Yeah, there have been a few features that have gone into the project recently. Go ahead.
Sorry, I don't know. My internet might be a little wonky. Is this around just capturing telemetry or about the traffic going out? Wasn't there some functionality contributed by the Tufin folks that kind of helped build a traffic analysis?
Yes, this is Christian, right?
Yeah.
Yes, so the Tufin folks did something interesting, which I think is helpful, but probably you don't want in production. So what they were doing is they were sniffing all the DNS queries for external services and automatically creating all the service entries.
Right. Okay. Yep.
So what this does is that this gives you, if you have block all traffic and you're still trying to access something, but it is getting dropped or you're getting a 502, you'll get telemetry so you can add alerts and then say, is this a security violation or is there a service entry we are missing? So you can do more incremental approach. You can take a more incremental approach with the new telemetry.
I got it. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Louis, you were saying something before there was a question.
Yeah, I mean, we've added some features in the past couple of releases, particularly the traffic sniffing stuff. That's, was, a prototype of it went into 1.3, and we expect to fully ship in 1.4, right? That allows us to do a better job of classifying traffic that really wasn't being classified before, right? Because there wasn't enough information in what the Kubernetes APIs were saying about the traffic. So we could detect whether it was HTTP or not, and if we do that, then you can get telemetry out of traffic, and that's particularly useful for traffic that was going not to another service within the mesh, but egressing out directly from sidecars, because now you would know if it was HTTP, and if it was HTTP, what host was it going to, right? And you could start to apply policies to it. And that would be true whether it was direct from the sidecar or out through an egress proxy, right? And it wouldn't just look like plain TCP and all that you would know about it was the IP address. Right, so the goal with telemetry in general is to make sure that we can kind of, even if there aren't declarations within the combination of the Istio APIs and the Kubernetes APIs about where traffic is going or what that traffic is, that we can help you figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And just to add on that note, we are trying to add some more visibility into traffic failures when you have failures related to MTLS errors. That's another gap we have in the current telemetry, where if you have incompatible MTLS on the server, on the client, or if there are failures related to certificates being out of date, for example. So I don't know if we'll get it in 1.4, but hopefully 1.5. Right, I'm done for this bullet.
Okay, Neeraj, you also had a bullet about the event in Montreal.
Yeah, so I was there last week for the DevFest Montreal. It looks like the organizer Archie is on call, so I'm actually gonna let him do the introductions and anything else he wants to add.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
All right. Now I just want to say thank you to Neeraj and there's folks from Layer 5 who came to help.
Archie, do you want to go ahead?
Hey, can you hear me?
Can hear you fine, Archie.
All right. No, I want to say thank you to Neeraj and to Lee, the guys from Layer 5 and Aspen Mesh who were in Montreal helping us to organize Cloud DevFest. And we had an Istio workshop, which was pretty popular choice. We had 3 tracks and was over 30 people who was attending the workshop. Niraj give us a very interesting overview of what my developers should use Istio Service Mesh, which was one of the most popular talks as well at the conference. So trying to spread around Istio around the Canadian community, I think went very successfully, and thanks for Dan sending some swag with James. So I think people were very happy to learn about those things. Thank you so much.
I, as you know, did very, very little involving that swag, but I'm glad it got there.
I think everybody in the community tried
yes,
to help.
Thanks for the invitation, by the way, Archie. Sorry we couldn't go. One thing we should use, people should feel comfortable using this meeting as a platform for, is kind of a call for presentations. If you're planning an event, then feel free to advertise it here. I see Christian Posta's on here. Megan was on here before. I've certainly spoken at events before. And so this is a good place if you're trying to get some content. Riggs, I see Riggs. If you're trying to get some content for an event, this is a good place to come and get some. So everyone should feel comfortable coming here and talking about that. And yes, we will absolutely. Thank you, Istio community. We will use the Istio Twitter feed, which has several followers, to promote your event as well. That's a good point. Feel free to ping any of us if that doesn't seem to be happening on its own. Speaking of events, Megan, do you want to talk about the one you went to and spoke at? Well, actually, before you do that, Archie, how many people attended your event in the Istio track?
So we had 240 people overall, and was around, I think, over 100 people were on this track where Niraj was presenting. Like it was selected one of the top 3 talks, the most popular ones. For the Istio workshop, we had over 30 people. The reason is we didn't get everybody there because there were so many options and people want to go to the tracks to see the talks, and the workshop was like more than half a day. So I think it was a hard choice for everybody. But the people who went, they had good feedback, learned a lot, despite some challenges with the environments because they were running on the laptops. So something potentially we could improve for the next one.
Cool. I can chime in really quickly on, there was another DevFest over the weekend in Albany, and I gave a sort of introductory Istio talk there, and yeah, it was wonderful, and yeah, the people there were super nice, and yeah, I got pretty good attendance, which made me very happy. I also see, thank you, Riggs, listing a Istio 1.3 feature tour that that we recorded a couple weeks back. And yeah, I'll be in Boulder next week, giving sort of a similar intro talk, kind of taking on one Istio feature at a time, specifically for Kubernetes users. That's pretty much all I got.
Oh, looking forward to that one, Megan. Be nice to meet you in Boulder next week.
Oh, the Mountain Time Zone, nice. Hey, Megan, did you see a range? I know when we were at the meetup in New York, we had a range of kind of knowledge of Istio from, barely heard of it, trying to figure out what it's about, to, yes, we're in the middle of an implementation. Did you see the same thing at the DevFest in Albany?
It was a lot of, I have never heard of Istio and I don't use Kubernetes. And so I was sort of anticipating that. It was a lot of like UX folks, front-end developers, they have different industries. So like the trucking industry was represented, I think manufacturing. And so it was trying to approach Istio and its value proposition from services, containers, and sort of work our way up. But they were super excited. Like one person, there seemed to be interest regardless, but it was definitely a new layer of challengingness to get there in 40 minutes to Istio.
Right. No, that is very interesting. It's different than going to a Kubernetes event where you can assume a level of knowledge about Kubernetes and build on top of that. You were starting below that.
Yeah.
So Dan, I can add something about the crowd knowledge base for the DevFest Montreal. So it was really interesting because there were few folks, at least two of them, who had been using Istio in their new production environment for a while. I think it was Sebastian from Coyote, which was very interesting. I've been interacting with them through issues. I just never knew that he was there at the event. But at the same time, there were folks like Megan said who haven't heard of Istio and just starting out, but most of them were very eager to learn. That was very interesting. Like, I think a little bit of the complexity is intimidating, but everyone wanted to learn.
And did you say Coyote was the name of the company using it in production?
Yes.
Yeah, they're using on the Ingress side, advanced with the SDS and Cert Manager, this type of implementation. But really on the front end, not inside of the service mesh yet, not inside of the services, but
right. Using it for Ingress totally counts, 100%.
Yeah, but they have a few blocking issues, so they just tested 1.3 and they said, there's some issues are bad.
I just resolved them, Archie.
Oh, really? Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Are there any other community events that we're aware of coming up?
Ram looks like he just put in a KubeCon Day Zero free Istio workshop.
Yeah, I talked about this before, but I wasn't able to produce a link for it because it wasn't posted on the schedule yet. But it's meant to be like a intro to Istio workshop. So if you have coworkers going from your company that haven't played with Istio as much, this might be a good place for them to get hands-on experience with it. I think that's about all I have to say about it.
And there is, of course, Service Mesh Con same day. Not Istio focused, but there will be some Istio content there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Let me try to find the link, but Sandeep and I are doing a talk, or well, actually a webinar on the 14th, I think, of October. And then I will be presenting that same talk with Lin Sun that evening. But let me get some links to that.
I can't wait to hear the debrief you give on the difference between giving a talk with Sandeep and with Lin.
Yes, sure, over beers.
Oh, that's great. What's the subject for that? Last time you had a specific subject. What's the subject this time?
So the theme of the various talks that we're going to try to do every quarter or so, and a few weeks after an Istio release, is using Istio in production or use cases of those folks that we know that would use Istio in production, and then also giving a overview of some of the new releases for that particular quarter. In this case, we're going to be looking at Istio Ingress. So last time we did it back in end of July, we did Istio Egress and egress routing. And this particular time around, we're going to be doing Istio Ingress and some of the security options around that.
That is very cool. Yes, it was a good one last time. I liked it a lot. If you're looking in the meeting notes right now, Megan is actually answering a question that occurred. I think this is the first time I've seen the meeting agenda used as a method for asking questions. I will remind everybody, we do have Slack. We do have good participation on Slack. I think it was you. One of the engineers recently said, have you checked in there and looked at the general? Like, there are a lot of things that are going on.
There's a lot.
There's a lot. There are.
It's a lot of questions.
But yeah, you can always use the meeting agenda as well. Speaking of things that have been announced, there will be a release next week coming. It is security related. I think Tuesday is the day it's coming out. We can't talk about details until it comes out, but if you are running in production and care about things like that, you should plan on a new 1.3, a new 1.2, and a new 1.1 being released on Tuesday. Details to come. Thanks for hosting, Louis.
You're welcome.
Now's when you say
I'm doing
else.
a tremendous job.
You are.
So I guess we're now at the kind of general Q&A section, although the Q&A seems to be happening inside the doc. But if people want to ask questions in live, near real-time video form, depending on how well Zoom is doing, I'm happy to take questions or hand questions off to other people who are more qualified to answer them than I am. But I can talk about the TOC, I can talk about the steering committee, I can talk about the roadmap, whatever people want to talk about.
Yeah, this is Srinivas. I'm trying to play around with the Istio on an existing cluster. So the cluster doesn't have Istio set up. The goal is to enable MTLS across multiple services inside the existing cluster. So I thought of two strategies. One, getting the Istio installed first, and all these services exist in one specific namespace. Either I can create another namespace, deploy these services, enable automatic sidecar injection for that namespace, and redirect the traffic to the newer namespace services. That's one strategy I have. Otherwise, what I can probably do is do a manual injection with the existing service definitions. That way, it would take down the existing services and inject the, say, sidecars inside the newer pods which are coming up. And then I can apply the auto sidecar label on the namespace. So this way, it keeps it intact. And I want to hear from people who have done it in the past, which would be a better approach. And also, I want to know if there is any tool which can help me ensure that the MTLS is enabled and the traffic is between services are flowing through MTLS after enabling it.
Okay, I mean, you said you had a bunch of services running inside one namespace.
Yep.
Right? Is that a live production service, or is this kind of more something you're?
I'm just playing it.
Okay.
So assuming if I do so I'm trying to create a scenario where if I want to do it in production, how would I do it? However, it is not in production. It's just playing around with some namespace.
Okay, so I mean, there's kind of there's a few different variations, and it will depend a little bit on what your actual production goals are. There are certain types of deployments where they can't either spin up a new namespace or spin up a new replica of the entire kind of graph of services that they're trying to do this transition with. And so they have to do things incrementally in place. And then there's a kind of very specific set of recommendations for that. If you don't care about doing any of that, right, then you could just kind of clone everything, enable automatic sidecar injection, and turn on strict MTLS, right? Because you're not doing any live traffic transitions between services that have sidecars and services and workloads that don't. And so there's none of those kind of intermediate states that you would care about. So that's a much simpler kind of setup, right? It's like I have a new cluster. The first thing I do is install Istio. I turn on strict MTLS and I just deploy things into it. And then I just make sure that they work. And there's telemetry to show you when MTLS is enabled for traffic between workloads.
Okay. All right. So
you go look in the Grafana dashboards, not under the service dashboards, but on some of the telemetry that we scrape from Envoy. I don't remember exactly the name of the dashboard tab. You can see, whether MTLS is being used or not.
Also, you can see on Kiali dashboard as well.
Yeah, Kiali has a pretty good visualization of this, I think.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for the great information.
If you're trying to do this live in production and you can't, you have to do this with a cluster and workloads that are effectively pets.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's a more complex transformation that you have to go through a number of steps. We're actually working on trying to automate that sequence for you. And there's a reasonable chance that feature would ship in 1.4, where we would just kind of automatically, for any traffic, convert it up to MTLS when we detect that we can. All right, and the goal there is to be able to kind of install into an existing cluster and get that cluster to the point where 90 to 99% of traffic is MTLS.
Okay.
And then you can kind of diagnose why that 1% hasn't made the transition yet, and then maybe make some adjustments to enable that last 1%, and then go kind of flip your policy to say, and now I require that all traffic must be MTLS, right? And that's the thing that gets you from kind of having a no security posture to, I'm trying to get to a strict security posture. Do I have one, and now I want to enforce it? And that's the goal.
Okay, cool.
And one thing I'll add there is that you're doing the right thing by doing this in staging first, and that's not obvious. There are certainly people who don't have a good staging environment where they can test these things out. Best practice would say not only do you test it out, but in staging, attempt to roll it out the way you will roll it out in production. So if you want to test first, just to make sure it works, you can do that. But then think about how you'll roll this to production. And if you will go in a phased approach where you install Istio, where you inject sidecars, where you turn on permissive MTLS, and then wait and eventually turn on strict MTLS. Strongly advise, when I see best practices in customers, they will go through that exact same set of steps in the staging environment, ensuring that that process is going to work, and essentially stage the process. And when you're sure the process is working, then you can go through that same installation and the same process in your prod cluster.
Yeah, that's exactly how I've written the code. What I did is like I got a set of scripts Dockerized. So it takes the subscription details. I'm trying it out on Azure AKS, and what I'm trying to do is like get all the parameters. And first, stage one or phase one, I'm just getting the Istio installed. Then next phase, I'm just getting the say a sidecar enabled on the namespace, and then going from there. So it is like a staged approach which I'm taking here.
Okay, well, that definitely makes sense. There's some pretty good documentation too about how to go through the kind of the more complex transition.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you're trying to do this live in production with existing workloads.
Can you paste the reference link or something here in the document? It would be
I can try to add it. Maybe you can follow up after the meeting, and I'll make sure it gets added to the notes.
Or maybe one of us can find it.
Yeah, maybe.
Riggs and I we're racing right now.
Yeah. That would be really grateful. Thank you.
Smell the smoking keyboards. Anything else people want to talk about?
Hey, this is Vicente here. I have a staging environment at Zendesk, and I'm playing with the locality load balancing. So what I've done is basically I have 3 nodes in 3 different zones, and I've put 2 deployments in Kubernetes that span service A and service B. I've made sure that the global flag on Istio 1.3 is enabled for the locality load balancing. I've also made sure that I've set up an outlier detection for the service B, which is the endpoint that service A is calling. But I just get a round robin load balancing no matter what I try to do. So I'm not really sure if I'm missing some piece of the configuration, or eventually if the locality load balancing only works when it's coming from an ingress gateway. So I might be missing something.
No, the locality stuff is supposed to work regardless, whether it's from ingress or from any other workload.
Good.
So when you say you're getting round robin, you've looked at the Envoy config dumps and seen that that's what the load balancer was set up as?
No, it's just the experience that I get when I'm doing like curls from service A to service B. I see like round robin, but I've tried to dump the config. I could see like weight being all one, but I could not get anything explicitly saying that that Envoy was configured to do the locality load balancing.
Yeah, we can actually tell by looking at the Envoy configs.
One question though, do you have destination rules to set up different load balancing for the services?
No, I've set up a destination rule because I need that for the outlier detection, but it's just like the most basic destination rule and an outlier detection rule that is required for the locality to work.
I can add the link to the new destination rules concept. There we have some additional information on how to set up load balancing on your destination rules. Hopefully that will help you.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, this might be a good topic to kind of continue in the Slack meeting. We can kind of point at docs and walk through.
All right.
There's the user lounge channel on Slack, which we're, kind of pointing to for people like you who have support questions, like I'm trying to do X, Y, Z. And just that's the right place to go and kind of get those questions answered, or obviously discuss if you don't mind sitting around waiting for people to respond to emails, in between their coffee and lunch breaks, etc. But yes, no, I mean, to answer the feature question, locality weighted load balancing is supposed to work between any two services and not just between ingress and a service. That's actually pretty critical. Often when you only have 3 endpoints, even if it was enabled, right? Envoy is kind of going to do an availability and health kind of sampling of those endpoints. And so, looking at hard determinism to see, am I getting locality weighted LB? Like if you have an endpoint fail so that Envoy is determined that endpoint is not available, right? So your outlier detection, then you should see deterministically that you would get failover up to the region level or up to the global level, right? And back down to other zones, depending on what's happening with endpoint availability. But in kind of typical situations, right, you should just see the traffic go to the nearest endpoint most of the time, right? So that's what you probably are observing right now. If you're saying, well, if you're not seeing that, then you're probably just getting round robin across all the endpoints like you described.
Right.
And we can usually tell, if you give us an Envoy config dump, we can usually tell if that's precisely what you're getting, and then we can kind of work backwards from that up into the Istio APIs. And it sounds like you might be missing a setting in the destination rule right now.
Right. Thanks for clarifying.
Thanks for trying out the feature, by the way.
All right.
There's, we've had feedback from a moderate number of people about it. There have certainly been some big customers who are very, very, very dependent on this feature working, but we want to make sure that everybody can adopt it because it's quite a powerful feature.
Yeah, we're very interested in lowering the latency, but also lowering the cost, the inter-AZ cost. So it's a good trade-off. When you introduce a sidecar, you have some additional latency, but you can get that back if you keep your traffic within the same zone. So
yeah, no, it's a good point.
Are you already using Istio?
Not in production, so we're close to that. We're thinking on launching our first services. We're going to start with non-critical services around end of Q4. So, but this is one of the big features that we would like to start on production within the day one enable. So,
yeah, no, makes sense. Yeah, we've certainly heard people say that being able to manage their kind of cross-region transit cost is a big reason that they want to use this feature. But the more typical use cases want to keep, latencies, median latencies down. Right, obviously, when you start talking about higher percentile latencies, then, you do end up starting to hit cross-region traffic sometimes, depending on service availability.
All right, thanks for clarifying.
Sure, no problem. Anyone else got something they'd like to talk about?
All right.
All right, I love Scott's picture. It makes him look like a
Jedi.
Jedi. Yeah.
No, he literally looks like Mark Hamill.
He looks like Mark Hamill.
Wait, Scott, is that a Jedi costume?
No, actually, it wasn't intended to be a Jedi costume. It's old medieval costume, but it's very close.
Same thing. It's all depends on what your blade is made of.
Exactly.
All right.
Thanks, Louis.
Well, everyone, thanks for stopping by, and hopefully I'll get to come to a few more of these. And yeah, catch you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.